There is one thing every great tennis game needs to nail if it wants to feel authentic. No, it's not graphics, not player names, and not even animations. It's something far more important, something most arcade tennis games completely miss. See, just like in most sports gaming genres, tennis fans are also split into two main camps. And depending on which camp you are in, you will enjoy different games for entirely different reasons. What are these camps? Well, they split into simulation lovers and arcade enthusiasts. Arcade games are often called simcades. They tend to look realistic with polished graphics and lifelike animations. Arcade titles typically have higher production value and bigger budgets. They are also designed with a pick-up and play style, making it easy, even for new players, to feel good about themselves while winning points in the game. Examples of simcades include Grand Slam Tennis 2, Topspin, AO Tennis 2, or Tiebreak. And then we have tennis simulators, which focus on faithfully recreating how tennis is played on the court. Currently we have two main tennis simulators, which are Tennis Elbow and Full Ace Tennis Simulator. Unlike simcades, these two are not high-budget productions. But what sets these games apart is the developers' focus on the nuances of the sport. These fellas pay close attention to details like player stats, ball physics, gameplay mechanics, shot balance, surface types, and, most importantly, the balance of risk-reward in shot making. And that's exactly what we will be talking about in this video, the absence of risk-reward mechanics in arcade titles. If you've watched my videos on tennis games before, I'm sure you've noticed that I am often critical about simcade games like Topspin and Tiebreak. Over the last few days, I've been thinking, why don't I, and others who share my taste in tennis games, enjoy these titles? Why can't I be another topspin lover? The more I thought about it, the clearer the answer became. It's the lack of damn risk-reward factor. See, there are certain aspects of realism that I am willing to overlook to enjoy a tennis game. I can live without unique court physics. I can tolerate player characters that are not as distinct as their real-life counterparts. Heck, I can even put up with some shot imbalance to a degree. But when it comes to the absence of risk-reward in shot making, that's where I draw the line. But what is risk-reward in shot making, you might ask? Well, risk is the chance of hitting the ball into the net or out of the court, essentially making an error during a rally. And that risk should increase the more aggressive your shot is or the tougher the situation you are in. In real tennis, going for a flat, powerful shot close to the line is a risky play, right? The same should apply to trying to hit a great ball back when you are in a defensive position. So, that's the risk part. Now let's talk about the reward. The reward in tennis game comes in two forms. First is the satisfaction of pulling off a difficult shot, and the second is the advantage you gain by putting your opponent in a tough spot. So in essence, the risk and reward are inseparable. You can't feel genuine satisfaction or a sense of reward without the level of risk involved in each shot. When developers remove risk, they end up homogenizing every shot in the game. And by doing this, they raise the baseline experience of the game. I mean, sure, you're less likely to make mistakes, so you won't feel bad about your performance, right? But at the same time, they take away the joy and satisfaction of hitting truly impressive shots. And just like in other aspects of life, the thrill of success often comes from the possibility of failure. Take Tiebreak for example. Since its early access days, players could spam powered-up shots that hug the lines, and so could your opponent. There was virtually no risk involved. And because of this, rallies ended up looking like basically exchanges of potential winners. And if every shot feels like a spectacular, line-clipping masterpiece, then no shot feels particularly special or rewarding, right? Now let's take a look at Topspin. The developers took a different approach here. In topspin, even if you hit perfectly timed, powered-up shot, the ball rarely even lands near the lines. Instead, it lands well inside the court and doesn't feel particularly impressive when it comes to the speed of the ball. And as a result, the difference between a perfect shot in topspin and an average one is generally pretty small. See, these two games may take different approaches, but they lead to the same freaking outcome. No shot feels risky, and no shot feels particularly satisfying either. And because of this, rallies in simcade games often feel like wars of attrition. The goal in the rally in these games is not to take risks or to outsmart your opponent. It's just to push them far enough to one side so you can hit the ball to the opposite side where they cannot reach it. And yeah, sure, real tennis rallies sometimes end this way too. But in real life, it's not like 95% of the time, just like in simcade games. For some reason, arcade tennis games developers seem to think that eliminating player error makes their games more appealing to a broader audience. But I think that's a very flawed assumption. The reason more people play Topspin 2K25 than any tennis simulator on PC is not because it lacks risk-rewards balance. If anything, people play Topspin despite that issue. The real barrier for tennis simulators is that some players just can't get past the outdated graphics or awkward animations in Tennis Elbow and Full Ace. And honestly, it's quite valid criticism. But imagine if Tennis Elbow 4 or Full Ace had the production value of Tiebreak. What kind of player base do you think those games would attract? I would bet my right arm that their sales would skyrocket, especially for a genre like tennis. Heck, I would even throw in a kidney if someone could make that happen. Moving on, another reason why the lack of risk-reward is a problem in arcade tennis games is that it breaks the immersion. See, errors are a fundamental part of tennis. In fact, it's quite common for a match to include like 20 unforced errors in a single 60-point set. Points won directly through errors are one of the defining characteristics of this beautiful sport. Think about most major sports. To score, you generally need to make a winning play, right? In basketball, for instance, you need to sink the ball into the hoop. In football, you have to score a goal. Then we have rugby and American football, where it's all about touchdowns and tries. Sure, errors play a role in those sports too, but mistakes don't directly translate to a point won by the other team. Instead, they just create an opportunity that still needs to be capitalized on. Tennis is actually quite unique, and that's because unforced errors, like hitting the net or missing the court, automatically award your opponent with a point. It's part of what makes tennis such a special experience actually. Even the best players rack up errors, especially when they are forced into tough defensive situations. That's why the absence of risk and the resulting lack of errors in arcade tennis games can feel so jarring to anyone craving an authentic tennis experience. A tennis game without errors is like a basketball game where only blocked shots can miss the hoop. Or let's say imagine a football game where every kick magically went into the goal. Would scoring still feel satisfying if missing your shot wasn't an option? It sounds absurd when applied to other sports, and it should be viewed the same way in tennis games. The third reason why the lack of risk-reward is detrimental to tennis games is how it limits strategy and tactics. Tennis is a sport that thrives on diverse playstyles and specialized approaches. You could be an aggressive baseline bomber like Fernando Gonzalez or James Blake, players who took big risks with powerful shots, racking up both errors and winners in the process. Or you could adopt the style of an attacking player like Roger Federer. Federer used to put relentless pressure on opponents, forcing deep returns to avoid being punished by a quick net attack. And then there are defensive titans like Novak Djokovic or Rafael Nadal. These players are like immovable objects, returning almost everything with depth and precision. Their strategy revolves around wearing opponents down, forcing errors and outlasting them with incredible stamina and speed. Each of these playstyles hinges on risk management. And when you remove the risk element from every shot, the game basically becomes overly uniform and uninspiring. Without risk, tennis gameplay devolves into a flat, gamey experience. It might look like tennis on the surface, but it doesn't feel like it at all. Instead of crafting a strategy that suits your strengths and preferences, in arcade tennis games, you're simply figuring out what works based on the game's mechanics and balance, and then you're just exploiting that one tactic. In Grand Slam Tennis 2, the go-to strategy was net attacks. In topspin, it was spamming wide angles from the baseline. In AO Tennis 2 or tiebreak, it's basically all about aggressive topspins to the corners. Now, compare that to tennis simulators. These games encourage a wide variety of viable playstyles, none of which feel overpowered. Players can choose how they want to manage rallies and gain an advantage, thanks to the integral role risk management plays in the game. Ultimately, without risk, tennis strategy falls apart, and with it goes the immersion and excitement of the game. Alright, the final reason the lack of risk reward is so frustrating in tennis games is how it narrows the skill gap. When we talk about skill gap, we are referring to the difference in performance between a top player and a new, inexperienced one. A new player is someone who just picked up the game and is trying to understand its mechanics, figuring out what works and what doesn't. This player is at the skill floor, the baseline level of ability required to play the game. On the other hand, we have the top player, who is someone that mastered every mechanic, logged countless hours and honed their muscle memory. They have fine-tuned their skills and know how to push the game's systems to their limits. This is the skill ceiling, the peak of performance a player can achieve. In most competitive games, a wide skill gap between the floor and ceiling is beneficial. It creates a sense of progression and gives players satisfaction as they improve. But in arcade tennis games, where errors are nearly impossible to make, the skill floor is artificially high. The game is basically designed so that even a new player can engage in rallies that look and feel decent without much experience. At the same time, the skill ceiling is incredibly low. The ability to make dazzling plays or showcase mastery is minimal because inputs are so restricted and the element of risk is nearly non-existent. This leads to a bland experience where no one truly stands out. Sure, a new player might enjoy holding their own against the AI or competing online, but that excitement fades quickly. Once they realize the skill gap is small, there's no real reward for improving. Without the satisfaction of mastery, players often lose interest. And before you start typing a comment about "Hey man, not everyone wants to be competitive in sports games." Look, friend, sports are by nature competitive experience. After all, everybody wants to win playing in sports. So do you, even when playing against the computer. So, cut the crap. Ultimately, when a tennis game sacrifices risk and skill progression to cater to everyone, it doesn't just level the playing field, it flattens it entirely. And that, my friends, is the quickest way to turn an exciting sport like tennis into a mediocre gaming experience. Alright, so these were my reasons as to why I think risk-reward is so much needed in tennis video games. See, great tennis game isn't just about aesthetics or ease of play, it's about representing the sport authentically. And risk-reward is at the heart of what makes tennis exciting, both on the court and in games. It's a fundamental design principle that defines gameplay, creates strategic depth, and gives players the thrill of mastering their craft. That's why I'm such a huge fan of Tennis Elbow and Full Ace. These games might not have blockbuster budgets, but they deliver a deeply rewarding and authentic tennis experience. If you are someone who values gameplay above all, I can't recommend them enough. Give these simulators a shot. You might just discover the true essence of tennis gaming. And if any developer of future tennis game watches this video, then please include the damn risk in shot making of your video game. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, then I would highly appreciate it if you drop a like. And if you want to see more content from me in the future, then make sure to subscribe to my channel. Anyway, that's all from me in this video. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.